How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it breaking down the latest in Mets land. And then yet another jam-packed Big Mets update segment we have to get into. Not only are we going to further touch on the Mets bringing back Ryan Stanek on that one-year contract to help try to solidify their bullpen, or at least get close to doing that, as we highlighted in a live show earlier today on the platform, along with the Mets are back in talks with Pete Alonso, according to John Heyman of the New York Post as of last night, that we reported on in a separate video. We further touched on Andy Martino's reporting having the Mets pretty much in a position where they're pivoting back to Pete Alonso. Check out that live show, folks, because not only are we expanding on those thoughts, but how, yeah, they're not done adding. We know the Mets would like another starter should the right opportunity present itself. Per Pat Ragazzo on the beat for the Mets would affiliate with Sports Illustrated over the past day he touched on. Now we hear today through separate reporting that the Mets are among teams in the mix for Dylan Cease, right-hander from the San Diego Padres. We'll get into Dylan Cease's game, how much of a tremendous get this would be for the Mets if they can pull off a trade for the rental starter, and ultimately the likelihood, unlikelihood of it happening, and how Francisco Lindor is in fact advocating for a Pete Alonso reunion. More on that and everything in between, folks, so thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe button as you first chime in. Let me know your initial reactions to the Mets having interest in Dylan Cease and being a part of his trade market. To what degree is what we'll get into possibly, along with Alonso and everything else in the comments down below. And shout out to our amazing sponsor that many of you guys know well here at BetUS, which has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Head over to betus.com.pa today, folks, for whatever you want to bet on, and make sure you use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube will get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you want to bet on. And folks, I'm a biased bettor. I'm a New York Knicks fan. I'm hammering the Knicks money line straight here on a $50 bet to hopefully give me an $85 turnout, $86 or so, should the Knicks win outright in their matchup tonight. They're at the minus 140 money line. Good luck to everyone else that's betting tonight, as the Knicks are going up against the Denver Nuggets. This is a straight bet, so feel free to tail should you wish, but please know I'm not a sports betting expert. I'm being blunt and saying that this is a biased bet because I want to see my Knicks win, and I firmly believe that they will have a great opportunity to do exactly that. And make sure you guys bet responsibly should you bet here with our amazing friends at BetUS. But folks, as we hop back in this one now, folks, as you see beside me from the graphic, this is to a degree what the Mets bullpen is currently consisting of. Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter, Ryan Stanek, Reed Garrett, Danilo Nunez, Jose Budo, Sean Reed Folding, in which his face is cut off, I apologize, and Huascar Brazoban, who I really think is going to bounce back, and now a full year with the Mets in this pitching lab, starting in Port St. Lucie versus that midseason adjustment, like what Stanek had to go through to a degree as well. But as I look at this bullpen configuration, I feel like the Mets could utilize at least one more. I think right now the depth is strong. You have guys that are currently going to compete on the outside looking in spring training, like Tyler Zuber, Genesis Cabrera, among others. I think will impact this bullpen shortly in the season because this is ever changing. But if there's one arm out there that I think the Mets should still do their best to land, as it's been reported they're still in the market of, as of at least a day ago, per Pat Ragazzo, this is a guy that fits a separate need than from Ryan Stanek, who comes in high leverage and low leverage there, especially against righty batters, versus bringing in a soft tossing southpaw. That way you don't have to be too overly reliant on AJ Minter as your lone lefty option in the pen, with Danny Young on the outside looking in right now. Genesis Cabrera looking to compete for a spot. But the Mets have been in the market for Tim Hill, who dominated that we saw with the Yankees over, again, over a 1 ERA across 10 playoff outings, just over a 2 ERA that we saw across over 30 outings after being acquired from the White Sox last season. Tim Hill, the side-arming southpaw who's so crafty, who's in the 100th percentile in ground ball percentage, has ridiculous swing and miss that he gets. Again, he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but that's okay because of how tremendous of a job he does by, again, getting guys to swing right through his 90-mile-per-hour fastball that tunnels oh so well there. Is like a high riser there, especially with that sidearm action going. It's a chef's kiss. It's a thing of beauty. And then you add in the fact that he's known what it's take to win in high leverage situations in a big market like New York. Would rekindle that relationship with Desi Drewskull coming from the Yankees organization, the Mets now assistant pitching coach. Same thing with Clay Holmes, Frankie Montas to a degree, among others. So Tim Hill, add him to the bullpen. I think the Mets should be very satisfied then. If this was their final move, that's okay, but I personally would like them to land one more. That way they're not too overly reliant on AJ Minter. It can have AJ be more of that natural setup man for them, regardless on the handedness of the batters if they're righties or lefties, because AJ gets them both out at a quality rate. He's a guy you always want in high leverage. Otherwise, you're kind of putting him to waste a bit, and I just want to make sure the Mets have as many options as possible. Tim Hill would be another tremendous get if they can try to to pry him away from a Yankees reunion, B, going to the Dodgers, as they of course are in the market for him among other teams at this point in time. But now, folks, let's get into why you probably clicked on this video, and that has everything to do with Dylan Cease. So let's first get into where this connection comes from. That is going to be courtesy of our friend on the platform here, Jon Heyman. And for those that don't know, John has been doing a fantastic job there, not only the New York Post, but as well on BR, in which he has been a reoccurring host for them. As I piggyback right after Jon Heyman there in the BR app, right around 4 p.m. Eastern, when he begins around 3 p.m. Eastern, covering all the latest MLB-wide topics. So guys, if you haven't checked out my segment from earlier today, highly implore you guys to do exactly that. There it is that we posted on X and on the community tab earlier. We touched on the latest with Alonso, Cohen, Boris, Ha-Seong Kim signing with the Tampa Bay Rays on a 2-year, $29 million deal. Reliever market, not only Ryan Stanek coming back to the Mets, but also Tommy Kahnle signing with the Detroit Tigers. Touch on it all in today's segment. We'll be back live there tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place. But this is what Jon Heyman had to say in regards to Dylan Cease.
Let's not be shocked if Dylan Cease does get traded, and the Mets, Cubs, all those teams are in on him. I'm sure, at least inquired on him. I'll say that. And
so Jon Heyman throws it out there when asked on the market of Dylan Cease. One, he alludes to that AJ Preller is obviously an aggressive and a competitive GM. It's not something that's just going to be easy to get done. But we also know that the Padres are in need of likely needing to shed some payroll, especially with not having a proper TV deal, with no longer having the Peter Seidler that was willing to go leaps and bounds to spend whatever it took for the team to make them great right away. Now with the 91-page lawsuit going on between the widowed wife of Seidler and his biological brothers, which is a beyond messy situation, the Padres have some things that they need to figure out heading into 2025, which includes potentially dialing back a little bit on payroll while allocating in other areas. They have plenty of pieces in their rotation, but multiple of which are current rentals. One of them, outside of Michael King, who we touched on with Pat Regazzo on a live stream over the past day and a half ago, this time we have a guy in Dylan Cease who I really think brings a lot to the table for this New York Metropolitan team. And what stands out a lot to me about someone like Cease versus some other guys out there is that this is a guy who absolutely, without question, no hesitation at all, has ace potential. This is not something that you can say about all the guys available in both the trade or free agent market, but it is the case here in someone like Dylan Cease, who's coming off of a very respectable 2024 campaign with the San Diego Padres after being dealt there just in the beginning of the season or so there from the Chicago White Sox. Many thought that Cease was only going to regress more and more after a not so great final year there in Chicago. The first half he was great, but then post-trade deadline he really didn't look too great. Not the case here, however, in 2024 with the White Sox, as you guys see down below, and pardon me, with the Padres for that matter, a 3.47 expected ERA to a 3.31 expected ERA. Very strong baseline ERA to expected numbers there, just over a 3 FIP there, a 3.46 SI ERA, a career sub-4 ERA pitcher. Dylan Cease just shy of 190 strikeouts this past season, 190 innings rather. I apologize for all the tongue ties happening today, folks. 224 strikeouts, which led to a 10.6 K per 9, so just a 3.1 walks per 9. So I'm loving that K to walk ratio right in that 7 category. Sign me up. Dylan Cease was one of the nastiest starters in baseball a couple years ago. In 2022, had a true dominant year there with the Chicago White Sox, where the guy was getting Cy Young votes, deservedly so. Himself, Lucas Giolito a couple years ago when he was really feeling it before the sticky substance crackdown happened. We saw Carlos Rodon, Garrett Crochet. The Chicago White Sox, for having very little analytics in that organization, have done a very good job in recent years on turning out ace caliber starters, or at least guys with upside in the top 3 category for said rotation. That's exactly what Dylan Cease gives you right away. Cease is exactly why you would go out of your way to land another starter this offseason versus the Mets maybe settling on a guy in the free agent market where I like Nick Pivetta a lot, but with that qualifying offer attached, do they really want to go there? There's some reluctance, and I understand that. The same way that there's reluctance to trade for a guy like Dylan Cease, knowing that he's in the final year of his contract. Just under 14 million AAV is what he's earning here in 2025, and the Mets know that there's no guarantee if you're going to keep Cease beyond the season, so how much does that go in hand in their willingness to give up key prospects? And it's important to highlight here because while Dylan Cease is a player that the Mets are monitoring, that they've at least inquired on, are available in the trade market, I will have to see to believe it on it actually happening and coming to fruition. Not that Cease doesn't fit the bill for this Mets team, because he absolutely does. If you acquire Dylan Cease in your rotation, then heading into the year is Kodai Senga, Dylan Cease, Sean Manaea, David Pearson, Frankie Montas, Clay Holmes as your 1 through 6 there. And then you have your further depth. I mean, there's little to complain about as a Mets fan. Absolutely, at least on paper. But for Cease, again, you have to give to get. The Padres are in a win-now stage. So if you tell me that they're going to go out of their way to trade in the NL with a team that will be competing for a wild card spot should they not win the division, that being the Mets there, as this is going to be a heated battle for a playoff spot in 2025. It's going to take a decent amount of assets even for a rental. And for the Mets, are they willing to give up the prospect assets and or the on-field type talent that the Mets could part with? They have an abundance of guys for second base, especially if they can get rid of Jake Cronenworth's contract. That'll further amplify maybe their interest in one of Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio type. But how much are the Mets willing to go and giving up asset-wise for a rental in Cease when you know there's not a guarantee of a reunion? While I think it would happen, I think for CC to love pitching in Queens half the season there in that pitcher's park, as well as being with a team with Juan Soto that's going to be pushing for not only playoff runs, but World Series aspirations for the years to come. Cease is a guy that I think you can warrant trying to give a 5+ year contract to if you bring him in now. But you have to bring him in, and you have to get that extension talk going right absolutely away. Otherwise, it feels like not that it would be a waste to bring in a rental, but like how Corbin Burns went there with the Brewers and the O's, while the O's didn't give up a complete arm and a leg there for him, they still gave up some solid assets, and that is something that has now come back to bite them, as Burns was a one and done there in Baltimore. The Mets want to make sure that they don't have a one and done situation should they acquire Dylan Cease. So while I understand the interest, I also understand the reservations, and it's going to be a fascinating one to find out what happens with Dylan Cease and this trade market, because again, the guy's a strikeout machine. He would be fan-flippin-tastic in this Mets rotation. Would have battled it out against the Phillies, against the Padres, against the Dodgers, and everyone else in company. But again, why would AJ Preller do it outside of their desperate need to shed some payroll and maybe the Mets have some assets they're looking for? That's what we have to find out, because then you bring in not only Dylan Cease in the conversation, but then you discuss briefly at least Luis Arraez, especially if the Mets do separately trade a guy like Jeff McNeil. Do I expect it to happen? No, but is it a worthy discussion to have? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having said discussions at bare minimum. And as you guys can see here from Dylan Cease's baseball savant numbers this past season, they're strong. Again, they fluctuated over the past couple years from his real breakout year in 2022, but Cease in the 75th percentile in pitcher run value, notably in the 22nd in fastball run value when he was elite in that category 2 years ago. So he's dropped off a lot, but that's all because of the emphasis on the breaking pitches. 99th percentile there in the breaking run value, 36 in off speed, expected ERA in the 79th percentile, 85th percentile, and the expected batting average of 90th in fastball velocity, 42nd, so just below league average and average exit velocity. Gives up some hard contact for sure. 70th percentile in chase percentage, 92nd percentile in whip percentage, and 89th in K percentage. Walk rate and everything else is below league average. 1, he's not too much of a ground ball pitcher. 2, the walks have fluctuated for him, but still a respectable K to walk ratio this past season. And a hard hit percentage right around league average too, so nothing terrible there. The 4-seam slider, curve, sweeper, change, cutter mix. Oh boy, the Mets would have loved to work with that 6-pitch mix, especially that curveball. One of my favorite pitches in the game, one of the nastiest ones as well. Gets so much swing to miss. That sweeper can get a lot of bite as well. You have a nasty arsenal there, a complete 6-pitch repertoire by Dylan Cease. To add into this Mets rotation, this is the guy that you give up assets for. This is the guy that's absolutely warranted of giving up some key guys even as a rental, because if you can get an extension done, Dylan Cease is among the arms worthwhile to make that happen, as long as his medicals come back looking clear as day, at least hoping that they're as clear as you can expect them to be. This is a guy that pitched 184 innings 2 years ago, 177 a year ago, 189 this past season there. He's had at least 210 strikeouts in each of the past 3+ seasons. Dylan Cease is a Bulldog, still in the prime of his career. We know the Atlanta Braves, among other teams, have showed trade interest in him, heavy trade interest in years past, and thankfully it hasn't happened. We need to make sure that stays the case. And if Cease is going to get dealt, the Mets absolutely need to continue not only have him on their radar, but to actually try to make something happen here, because he is just that damn good. Now, folks, let's get into our final final remarks here before we wrap up the show today. And thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe button. And let me know your initial thoughts here as we break down the latest in Mets land, not only on Dylan Cease, on Ryan Stanek, but also having to do at least a little bit there on the front of Mr. Pete Alonso, because there's someone going to bat for him. And the man that's going to bat for him has a bit more pull than pretty much anyone else in the organization when we evaluate players and their importance of what they have to say, right? Does it carry any weight? Well, it does with a couple guys, and it absolutely does here with the man himself, that being in Mr. Francisco Lindor. In the latest article that came out a day ago by John Heyman, which says Francisco Lindor needs to be named Mets captain, it also makes note that yes, Lindor absolutely prefers Alonso in this lineup in 2025, and that has been made noted there to the front office. Furthermore, Lindor did speak to Mets fans and the media there at Amazing Day at the Fan Fest this past weekend, and I can tell you straight up that when asked about Alonso, he's only spoken glowingly things of. Most Mets players I have heard on record speaking about Alonso want Alonso to return and have a level of confidence that it will happen. Lindor is just the further reasoning to believe that an Alonso reunion will likely happen. It's just a matter of a formality of coming together there on the contract terms, specifically on the stubbornness and not just AAV between Cohen and Boris, but also on the payout structure of those buyouts. The Mets want it structured a certain way where they're not completely screwed on the buyouts, and they would probably like maybe a level of control there. That's what we will further find out on when those contract details inevitably come out, as I do think the Mets are going to bring him in one way or the other, everybody. But Francisco Lindor to go to bat for Pete Alonso and allow this to be put on record, pretty much making it known that, yeah, he wants him to return, does carry some weight, the same way that Lindor advocating for Soto absolutely carries weight. Lindor's ecstatic that Soto's here, but the same way, and I'm sure Soto would agree, their team would be much better, on paper at least, with Pete Alonso batting behind them in 2025. And that's the simple reality of this situation. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse here because we talk about Alonso enough. We already beat it enough here every single day. But what I can tell you is that for Lindor to advocate for Steve Cohen be back in talks with Boris and Alonso's camp over the past day is further reason to believe it'll happen. It's just a matter of when. And that is hopefully something that, while I've been saying for the past month and a half, we will hopefully find out a resolution soon. I will beat that drum once more by saying I hope that we have ourselves a resolution soon. Mets fans, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Alonso, Stanek, potentially adding more of the bullpen, potentially adding more of the rotation with a guy like Dylan Cease among others. And a little tidbit there, and then we'll wrap this one up. We did see a comment there from Ben Nicholson-Smith earlier today, who's been doing a very good job covering the Blue Jays through Sportsnet. Did note that a source said MLB agents have recently been informed they cannot contact Pete Alonso. This would be initiated by Alonso himself. Evidently, Alonso wants to continue working with his agent, Scott Boras, without hearing from other agents looking to poach him. Simple as that, folks. Yes, you know how Scott Boras poached Alonso away from his previous representation, even though Alonso willingly agreed to it a year and a half ago there when he denied the Mets contract extension, and then not long after, as we head into the fall of 2023, signed with Boras. Well, he's not happy that given all the rumblings and given the lack of proper negotiation that's happened for Alonso this offseason, rival agents have went out of their way to reach out to Alonso and Scott Boras' camp, pretty much being like, hey, Pete, if you want to go elsewhere, we'd be happy to have you. Alonso has shot that down, has told everyone, I'm sticking with Boras Corp, so whether you like it or not, folks, that's how things are going to be. I will let you guys interpret that, feel however which way you want to feel about that, but that is what it is. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you all in our next live stream and our video. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, or whatever you're watching this. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.